everyone. This is Michelle Biggs, CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting, and the host of Real Conversations with Michelle, coming to you with this month's episode of Real Conversations with Michelle. The topic for today is parenting special needs. And for those of you who are new to my platform, I am a master certified life coach. I'm also, as I mentioned, the CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting. I leverage this platform to talk about life topics with the goal that something is shared you'll be able to apply in some kind of way in your life, knowing that every topic is different. But this is an educational and learning platform. So, like anything else, I ask people to please do your own homework to make sure that whatever you do decide to do, it is truly right for you. So, that being said, let me bring up my guests. I have eight very special people joining me today, and I'm going to bring them up one by one and have them introduce themselves. So, first up, I am going to bring Miss Patricia Mack. How are you, my dear?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
Good, good. So, why don't you tell everyone about yourself? Tell them where you're located, the age of your child, and the special need that you're parenting.
So my name is Patricia. As you said, I am located in Randallstown, Maryland, which is in Baltimore County. My son Jonathan is 16, and he has multiple disabilities, which stem from him being a 25 weeker. He was born at 25 weeks, weighing 1 pound 4 ounces. So he has cerebral palsy, autism, nonverbal,
Yeah.
you name it, he has it.
Yeah, and your age of Jonathan? How old is
Six,
Jonathan?
16.
Good, thank you, Pat.
Mhm.
Next up, Melody. Hello, Melody.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, the age of your child, where you're located, and the special needs that you're parenting.
All right. Well, I live in Wake Forest, Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a daughter who is age 6, and she has autism and sensory processing disorder, and she was formerly nonverbal.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Melody.
hmm
Next up, I have Ann and Alonde. I want to make sure I'm saying your partner's name. Alonde, am I saying it correctly?
Alon, but Al for short
Alon.
is fine.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Al. Go ahead, Ann.
Hi, everyone. so, my name's Ann. People you typically call me Anna. That's fine. But we have a 2-year-old. His name is Adonis. He has to sit with us because we don't have a child care right now. Um, but Adonis is trach dependent. He also suffers from global developmental delays, cerebral palsy. He is also an ex 25 weeker. And we actually live in Columbus, Ohio, by ways of New York City. So, yeah, shout out
Thank
to
you.
all our New Yorkers.
Yes, yes, yes. Former New Yorker. Yes, ma'am. Always a New Yorker. Okay, next up, Jen.
Hello. Hi. I'm Jen, and I parent my 18-year-old, soon to be 19-year-old son, Miles, who is, he's 18. He's going to be 19 in January, with Jason. We're a military family, and we're in Orlando, Florida. And his diagnosis is, his two major ones are autism and ADHD, but also some minor that we've been working on is auditory processing and oculomotor dysfunction.
Thank you, Jen. And that's my relative, y'all. Hey, Jen.
Hi.
All right. And next up, I have Monique. Hi, Monique.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
Monique.
Hello.
Tell the
Hi.
audience a little bit about yourself.
Monique Mitchell. I'm parenting my 35-year-old daughter who has cerebral palsy, some mental challenges. She is wheelchair bound, always has been. And we live in Georgia now. We've been here 4 months, but I raised her in New York.
Yes, a lot of New
Yeah.
Yorkers on this.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Monique.
hmm
And next up, I have my ride and die chick, who everybody will probably know from many real conversations. Miss Mindy Lou Fuller. Yes, Mindy.
Hey, Michelle. So, everybody, my name is Mindy Fuller. I live in the Raleigh area, and my 11-year-old manages ADHD.
Thank you, Mindy.
Hmm.
And next up, Miss Jessica. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm well. I hope you are.
I am doing great. Doing
Good.
great. So talk a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name is Jessica. I am in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have an almost 13-year-old son who is autistic. He also has sensory processing disorder, severe anxiety, and a needle phobia.
Yes. Yes. And you also, I brought you on because you manage a support group for parents managing special needs. So we're going to get a little bit of your insights from that perspective, as well as you yourself. Also, you mentioned you yourself have ADHD as well.
That's right.
So you can relate to a lot of these things that are going on with the kids. So want to hear your insights around that
Sure.
as well. And last but not least, I have a grandmother here who is joining me. It's funny calling you grandma, but
Right.
yeah, but Stephanie, I wanted you on because you represent to me what the village looks like for parents who are managing kids who have special needs. So talk a little bit about your situation.
Okay, well, my name is Stephanie Bryant, and I'm located in Raleigh, by the way of New York as well, Long Island.
Mm.
And I am the proud grandmother of a 17-year-old grandson who's living with Down syndrome.
Yes. So you guys, full house here, representing a variety of special needs and full range of ages, which I think is important for people to hear about. We may have people in the audience who are new in this journey, and definitely Monique, Jen, and Steph, with your kids and grandson being older. Love to hear your perspective because you have seen a lot and been through a lot. So love to hear your perspective from that standpoint. So we'll jump right in. So first question, when and how did you uncover your child's illness, and what were your first reactions to that when you first heard about it? So I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna call names because we have a lot of people on here. So Anne and Alon and Al, talk about your journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, our journey started in the NICU. I think most people in here, that might be the case. So the thing for us is when they begin like diagnosing in the NICU, it's very, I guess there's so many different things that they can tell you. But you start off, in our case, like we started off with our child on a ventilator. So his illness was officially diagnosed after about, by the time he was 34 weeks, which is known as bronchopulmonary dysplasia. So, so BPD is basically an illness of the lungs. A lot of preemies typically have it, just the impact of being on a ventilator for so long. So due to being on a ventilator, he also, after being on a ventilator for an extremely long time, after a while, kids who cannot be intubated for a long time end up having a trach. So that is why he is trach dependent. We had decided on the trach after he was like 6 months. We started off in New York City, and then our journey made us end up in Ohio, just because BPD, they had a BPD NICU specific for kids with his issue, severe BPD. And I can say the whole journey was not easy. Our son, of course, was in the hospital for about a year. So a lot of these diagnoses that we are getting now, like for example with CP, his cerebral palsy was recently graded as of last month, because he's only 2. So I'm sure we may have some more ahead, and we've just kind of been dealing, as we go along. And I think the hardest part of the entire journey, of course, was finding out that your child needs a trach, but we had a lot of support. I can say there was some difference in what we felt about what needed to happen, because I think when you get a trach, your child is typically paralyzed for a few days. So that was hard for both of us. But yeah, is there anything you want to add about how you felt about the trach?
I think for the most part it was very scary because when he was in the hospital, everybody was saying like, "Oh, he's gonna be here for about 2 weeks and he's gonna be home," and then 2 weeks turned into a month.
Yeah.
And then when the doctors tell you what's actually happening, you feel helpless and scary. But you don't know what to do because you don't know anybody in that situation.
Right. And that I think most people can understand that. It's just when you're in the NICU, everybody has a different story. So you're thinking, okay, all they need to do is gain weight. And we just waited and waited, and he just never got off the ventilator. So yeah, that's kind of how we uncovered our diagnosis. It's a little complex for us right now because he's still pretty young. But yeah.
Thank you, Ann. Who wants to go next in terms of your journey? How you uncovered, and yeah, go ahead, Pat.
I'll go next because my situation is a little similar to Ann and Al's. Jonathan was a 25-weeker as well. They just said he just decided to be in the world early. So he came at 25 weeks. He weighed 1 pound 4 ounces. The doctors didn't give him a week to live. They even told us we had the option of putting him to sleep permanently. And we were like, what does that even mean? And they went through explaining how they would do it. And we were like, no, that's not an option. So he ended up being in the NICU, two separate hospitals. He ended up being at Johns Hopkins for the longest, but he was an inpatient for 10 months, the first 10 months of his life. He had G-tube, which is a feeding tube. So he had the bag and the colonoscopy. And so that leads us to now where he's still dependent on, he doesn't chew. So we've had, and he's nonverbal. So we've been to feeding clinics to try to get him to chew and eat. But so he mostly just eats pureed foods. So that's a challenge in itself to finding him things to eat. So it's mostly mashed potatoes or applesauce or things like that. And he's 16.
Yeah.
And he drinks milk constantly, chocolate milk constantly.
Wow.
So, but he has a mouth full of teeth. He just, because I think he was on the feeding tube for so long, he just doesn't care about chewing.
Yeah.
But it's work in progress with him because some days you don't know which Jonathan you're getting. The challenge, him waking up, and he has behavioral problems. So we've been to behavioral clinics, and because he's nonverbal again, he doesn't know how to vocalize his feelings. He has tablets. He chooses not to use it. He'll rather point or pull you to get what he needs, or just have temper tantrums. But so we knew from the beginning
Thank you, Pat.
his disabilities.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Jen, how about you?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
So with Miles, he was our first. We didn't really know what to expect. He was an in vitro baby, so we were just very excited to be pregnant. We knew there might be some issues early age because there's a family history of ADHD. And when he was born, he was very colicky. He, very irregular sleep schedules, very active. So we kind of knew what we were kind of getting into because we started the family and we were like, we'll just roll with it. But maybe like first or second grade, his autism didn't really present as typical that you would see like in the movies or on TV. He just didn't verbalize. He had some words, but the switch never came on. And he was very hyper, and he was very fixated with the TV, liked watching TV. Initially, we did get a diagnosis of autism. We did not ask for medication at that time, even though it was offered. We thought we would just do everything we could aside from that, and then we'll recommit to it or reevaluate it. And then I think at 3rd or 4th grade, we saw another specialist, and he said, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you get medication. The medication's to help with quality of life. So if he's impacted his quality of life, then we go ahead, and that's when we started around 3rd grade. But challenges, and once you start working on certain issues, others. So when you start with one thing, other things happen, or it comes to light, and then you have to work on that.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll talk a little bit about that because I definitely want to get into the whole school age stuff too that you guys are having to manage or had to manage. Just Mel, you want to add something? No? You want to go next? Did we talk about you?
We can go next.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to go next for a couple of reasons, but also because autism, as one person can see it, as that's the diagnosis we got initially, because of the sensory processing, and she's 6. So there could be other things that we haven't been evaluated for, but she is not typical either. She doesn't look the same as someone else. Her behaviors are different than others. But we first noticed when we moved from one location to another, her speech fell off. And so I started to ask questions. My in-laws have experienced autism through my 2 brother-in-laws. And so I started asking my mother-in-law questions like, did you notice their speech fell off? Did you notice this? I was with her all day, so she always looked at me, but
Ooh, we just lost Mel. Let me text her and let her know that we lost her for a minute. And we'll see if she gets back on. Let me have Mindy. Why don't you talk about your situation?
Well, my situation's different. My son has ADHD, so his problems didn't present themselves very early, not at birth, but as he grew, he would go to daycare and things like that, and his problems presented themselves when he got in a group of people, when he got with other children. He would maybe raise his voice to match the noise in the room, or be too physical with the other children. It was very hard for daycare teachers to manage him. And a lot of times he needs to be redirected. But at that time, when he was young and in the preschool, they don't know how to do that. They don't have the tools to do that. So for us, it was a discovery. We had to really watch him, study him, see what was going on, see what he needed, move him to different facilities, get him some therapeutic care, and just give him what he needed at the time. It was a lot of observation for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Mindy, for sharing your story. And like I said, I decided to choose a variety of different things because all of you, as you mentioned, scenarios are a little different. Monique, did we talk? Did you get a chance to
No,
talk yet? Okay.
not yet.
All right, Monique, why don't you
Okay.
share?
Okay. So my story is similar to Anne and Pat. My daughter was 32 weeks born, and she was in the NICU for 9 months. Um, I am fortunate that Kiara never had to use a tube, and she's verbal, but she is wheelchair bound, and she has never walked. She can transfer to the bed, to the stool, and she talks a great deal. She doesn't read or write, but she can remember. She knows some words, and she can she mimics a lot of things, and she's very social alert. Uh, yeah, that's how
Hmm.
Kiera is, and she's a woman now. She does have a lot of challenges because she doesn't work and she's in a wheelchair. She's always been with me. She's never been in a home. She's always been my roommate, and yeah, so we just learn as we go. Every day every day still now it's a different challenge. And basically, I really hate to say, but you just roll with it. You go from one thing to the next thing, and you face it, and and you just go with it. Um,
Yeah.
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 So it's
So
not
I am.
easy. I'm not saying that to say it's easy, but you just go from one piece of the puzzle to the next piece. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And hold on one second, you guys, because Melis is texting me. So I think she's in the rehearsal link. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit in terms about the toughest thing about parenting a child with special needs. And each of you have hit on it a little bit. Monique, you just said it. Every day could be very different. Pat, you talked a little bit about that. But what would you say would be the most challenging thing for you if you think about this whole journey that you're in? Um,
Well,
anyone? Go ahead, Monique.
okay. So it's almost like you're in a box, like you it's a different world, when I had my daughter, I was 20 years old. I was young, but I was married, way too young. But yeah, I had it at 20 years old. So you had your friends and they're having children and it's like it's you can't really relate. And my daughter didn't go to public school, so you didn't go to the to the parents meetings and things like that. So it's a whole different world. I'm not going to say I lost friends, but you just had to like remove things because now I had really didn't have things in common with them as I did. So and they don't understand. They try to be supportive, but they really don't understand. You have to be another person, and your focus is all on your child now. So you're kind of like, yeah, it is a different world. You're not on the outside, but it's just different.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
because
And
Mel.
I definitely agree.
Go ahead, Ann. Like I was going to say, Mel talked
I
about it a little
totally
bit. Hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Mainly because I feel like, and I think at some point we'll talk about just the different resources. And I think in my era of having my kid, like I had him when I was 27, and I had graduated college, already started working. But I think what's difficult is for so long this research of like what these kids can do. I think media has always kind of skewed families, and it's almost, especially like within my culture, they almost make you afraid of what may be within a disability. And I think that's a little unfortunate, because I feel like where we found the most power is the fact that yeah, our child is different and this story is different, but where my Caribbean parents would be like, "Don't tell anybody what you're going through."
Hmm.
I also was empowered by other women who are not of my culture who shared their story, and because of their story, like, we were able to get our child the help that he needs. So with that being said, in the hardest moments, we cried it out. Or, I mean, sitting in the NICU, they're telling you, your child will not eat, walk, stand, all this stuff. And they always shaped it as a bad thing. But then when I really speak to and meet other people with disabilities, this is not a bad thing. It's a different thing that over time
Right.
they've painted as
Absolutely.
bad.
Right.
And so I think we've made a decision where it's like, okay, people were always like, oh, I feel so sorry, da da da. Don't feel sorry for us. We're fine. My son is alive, and we live life. You know what I'm saying? Like we
Right.
live and
And that's your life.
yeah, it's like, you have those friends who at
Yeah.
first they're like, oh, I feel so bad. But then it's like they see things change over the years. And especially with social media, like you can show people your journey. You can see other people's journeys from other places. And I feel like where my friends may not understand, it's like, you have a whole network of people out there that do.
Yeah.
So I think it was hard internally, but then over time, like you learn to grow with it, like you said.
Yeah. And I want to
Well,
get back to Mel. I want to
okay.
get back to Mel. Monique, I want you to say something. I want to get back to Mel.
Okay.
And Stephanie, I want you to also talk, because something you said, Ann, and I know Mel and I were talking during the rehearsal. Mel, you mentioned losing friends as well, right? Just people. But talk about Mel, if you don't mind talking about your journey. And then Monique, I'll get back to you
Okay.
in terms of your statement. Go ahead, Mel.
Should I pick up where I left off? Where
Yeah,
the
because we lost you, girl. You just
I'm
started spinning.
sorry. My computer, it's on its last leg. I apologize.
That's okay.
So yes, her speech had fallen off, and that was the first indicator. So because there was autism in the family, it's not that I wanted to be quick to label her or diagnose her, because I actually sat back for a while and just said, she's developing differently from my other two sons. And they were advanced. They knew their number, shapes, letters super early. So I was giving her space to just show who she was and let her develop. The diagnosis gave me direction, but it gave my husband what he had always feared. So it was different for us as far as processing what we had in front of us. And it just helped me to say, okay, so we need to do this, 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 and that. Not that and that was the other thing. I think I went in a line trying to figure out, okay, how can I help her? But that can also, depending on your personality, turn into how can I fix her?
Mm-hmm.
And so I quickly learned she doesn't need fixing. She needs me to love her through this.
Yeah.
And once I learned that, I calmed down and we got along better. I didn't want to be her stressor. And that's what I was becoming, because that can happen. And also being short-tempered with the neural normal children, like, oh, you have nothing holding you back. You're supposed to just get it and go, and you shouldn't have any issue. And that's not fair to them because they're still kids. So I went through that as well. But she was nonverbal. I think we had a lot of fears with her being a girl, not being able to say who touched me, who hurt me, who did this, why I'm crying. It was just screaming. And so that was hard, just not knowing, not having an answer to, that was a hard part. Not knowing, like I had relatives and friends like, why don't you ask me to help? It's because I didn't have a pacifier or an answer or an antidote for what could make her have a trigger, what could make her, I didn't have a way to calm her in the beginning.
Yeah.
And preparing, the hardest thing was probably other people, and I didn't know how to ask for help. But on the note of friendships, when you're trying to navigate something completely different and you're a super independent person and you want to figure it out before asking people to come in, it makes some relationships hard. And then also some people just didn't know how to deal, so they backed off. It was either we were too loud or something may happen, or they chose to not include me to spare me instead of letting me make the decision. And I think it happens. I don't think I'm alone in that. I saw an episode of it.
Not at all.
Yeah. Ann just talked. I don't know if you heard Ann as she was speaking, but she was talking about the dynamic as well. And Monique, you did. Monique, finish with
my daughter used to my friends used to want to invite her to birthday parties like Chuck E. Cheese and things like that. And I went once and then I said, this is not for us, because like she's in a wheelchair and Chuck E. Cheese is like a no because they're flying all over the place, and she wants to do that. So I had to just decline a lot of birthday parties, and then like I said, she's verbal and she can talk, but I can't go everywhere. She's very social, she's very loving, but we can't go to everyone's house because it may not be accessible. You
Mhm.
know, we can't go because of the bathroom situation. It's a lot of things that we can't do just because she has equipment. And I know
Mhm.
some of you have that issue also. So yeah, so that's why I can't see your name. You were saying like the friends, do you some of them you just had to just ease away from and some chose not to, be involved or just didn't want to invite you because they didn't know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for that, both of you.
yeah.
Stephanie and Jessica want to hear from you. So, Stephanie, speaking as the village for your daughter, talk a little bit about your situation.
Well, my situation was a little different. He was my first grandchild. Um, Nisha suffered from hyperemesis through the whole pregnancy, meaning she did not have a day without or hour without vomiting. So she was going to the doctors regularly. Um, Me being in the medical field, nursing, I knew that, she was okay as long as I kept her hydrated. He was a full term baby. When we got to the hospital, there were some complications with her, and they came out to talk to me, and I said, "Well, I want to be in the delivery room." So one of the doctors that I work with said, "Okay, we're gonna let you in." So I was in the room, and something happened. I don't know what happened to this day, but the doctors looked at me and said, "Okay, if we have to make a choice between your grandchild and your daughter, what do you want us to do?" I'm like, "What? I don't know the kid, but I know my child." So, and it was kind of like a selfish moment for me, but I was like, do everything you can to save both. And I knew immediately when Tejan was delivered that he had Down syndrome.
Mhm.
Nisha had developed some type of infection, so she wasn't able to see him right away. So, of course, he was in the NIC unit for a few days. She still couldn't see him, so she was asking me questions, but I didn't know how to tell my child that she had a child with special needs. And for a long time during that period, I kind of like was like wanting the doctors to tell her and not me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Tejan is now 17, but he's definitely has its challenges on days. And I think Nisha, her concept is, "Mom, I'm just being a mom." She doesn't like to be in the forefront. She said, "I'm not doing anything different from any other parent. I'm
Mhm.
parenting my son." Um, and I think the day that I asked her about uh, talking on this live, it wasn't a good day. She was
Yeah.
like, "Mom, I'm just not ready for this." And I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
chuckled about it. And I then I thought about it. I said, "Oh my God, he's gonna be 17 and you're still not ready to talk about this." But her answer was, "I'm just his mom."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to support her in anything. The services, again, it's difficult. There's not a daycare for a special need child. And if there is a daycare, your child is not going to be priority because they're going to say, "Look, your child needs X, Y, and Z. How can we put these things into place?" And advocacy is very important, especially for your child. You want what's best for your child, whether your child has special needs or not. But again, these children are kind of put in a box. I remember fighting with the elementary school because I was like, "Okay, I'm racing home to pick up my grandson because you won't allow him to go to after school." So it turned into, what do we need to do so that he can be interactive with other children? Because Tejan always tried to talk, but you couldn't understand him. But now, at 17, you can understand him.
Oh yeah, he's a
And
talker. He's a
no
talker.
means no, and he's a true worshiper.
Thank you,
Yeah.
God.
So it's kind of funny now because he'll tell me now. He'll be like, "No, Ma, I don't want to." I'll be like, "Okay,"
Yeah.
but he's 17.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Jen, because I want to just acknowledge the fact I have two nurses on here. Your experiences as nurses, because you've seen things just in general. How did that help you through your process? And then Jessica, I haven't forgotten about you. Um, how did that help you through your process in terms of managing the situation?
I think when you deal with teachers and other medical staff, it does give you a little bit of a help because you're able to have the language and you're able to understand the testing and all the assessment because there's 1,000 assessments that they do. So it does help in that way. And for me, what I did on this, because I wasn't a pediatric nurse, I did a lot of research on my own on, that was like my second job to
Right.
find out all the different possibilities of treatments and education and therapies. So it does help, but, I think with, anybody can do it.
Right.
It's just you just have a little bit more a head start because you're already reading reports and you're understanding medical terms and all the assessments and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
I want to talk a little bit about advocacy in a minute and support. I want to go to Jessica because Jessica also is in that space. Jessica, what was your journey with your son?
Well, I think mine is very similar to a lot of other autistic family situations where his disability isn't so noticeable, right? And so, I have physical therapy as a background. So before I had kids, and so I was aware of milestones and things like that and the importance of them. Of course, you want your children to develop their own way, but they are put there for a reason. If your child's not reaching the milestones, there's potentially an issue as to a reason as to why. And so I just started seeing some differences in him around a year and a half. He wasn't interacting very much, and a lot of sensory issues were popping up. And again, just in my background, I was able to spot them with fairly great ease. And so it was starting to concern me. So I went to a pediatrician, and I think some people might relate to this in the autism community, especially, and ADHD as well. I couldn't get anybody to believe me. The doctor, and it's a real issue in our community. I just kept telling him, I just think that something's going on. I need for this to be looked at. And he's like, oh, it's fine. I heard he'll grow out of it a lot. And, I just got tired of it. It was about 6 months into him telling me these things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to seek help on my own. So without his referral, I went and got him evaluated. And sure enough, he was diagnosed at 2.5 years old. And my reaction, it was like probably outside of the norm because I was relieved.
Right.
At this point, I actually had somebody to listen to me. And I could put a diagnosis to what was happening with him. And, with the diagnosis came, I was able to formulate a plan and get him the help that he needed. So it was relief. But of course, there's overwhelm.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get a diagnosis as a parent without feeling overwhelmed as well.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take on.
Yeah. Let's talk about the assessment piece. 'Cause I think Stephanie, I don't remember if it was in our rehearsal or you and I having the one-on-one, the importance of assessments, right? Because a lot of times what I've heard from a lot of you in our individual conversations and just from reading is a lot of times people don't either want to go through the assessments, right? Don't want to believe that there's something wrong. And Jessica, in your case, you really you stuck with it and really pushed people to tell you something. But Stephanie, talk about the assessment piece, because you and I talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed when working in the doctor's office, like she said, they give you this milestone packet, and did your child go coo at 0 months? Are they pulling up? Are they are they crawling? Are they saying words? And a lot of parents, because they don't want to believe that there's something wrong with their child. So say the child said ba. Oh yes, my child does that. Was doing that at 3 months or 4 months. And that, I think that's where a lot of the misdiagnosis happens. Because if you're not honest with the assessment, because the doctors are not with your child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's important that even if you put it, you need to elaborate. Well, it's not consistent, but this is what I see, so that the doctors can make informed decisions. Because, like, I think it was Jessica who said she's asking her doctor, but they're not giving her a referral. Not that they're not believing it, they just don't hear it, they don't connect it, because they're looking at what's put on paper. They're looking at the child and they're jumping around and just doing everything that hop on one foot, okay, but not really understanding that there's a problem. So
Right.
that's why that piece is very important. And when you have parents who are in denial, or as a grandparent, I saw it first, because I seen when he came, Nisha didn't have a clue what she was going to be facing. And again, having that background, it was easy for me to say to her, everything's going to be okay. But I was just grandma. She was the actual parent. So what I've learned from Nisha is that allow her to parent her son and just be there when she needs me, and not more so when I feel like she needs me
Mm-hmm.
or if they need me. And I think that's the important piece.
Thank you for that.
If
Did
I'm allowed
anybody?
to add,
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
I think it's so interesting because I heard everybody talk about their perspective in the assessments, and I think it may be a little different for us because, like in the NICU, they go through the Bailey and all of those kind of things for developmentally appropriateness, so to speak. But I always, every time Adonis gets back into the hospital, I say it's interesting how you'll have a team of medical doctors get together and do rounds about the medical aspect of the child. But I always felt like it would be interesting to have a group of therapists, and physicians and neurologists kind of come together and do, I guess, like developmental rounds on these children as well. Because I think in our case, I feel like it's awesome if you work in the medical field, all of these terms you want, you are looking for the consistency. There's a cadence that you're looking for. But me, I have a media background, you know what I mean? Like dad is a teacher, not everybody has the resources to understand the importance of assessments. And if we don't have those tools, yeah, we're walking in there not understanding. There's a language barrier for some, when I was in the NICU, one of the things that frustrated me is to kind of overhear some people talk about how parents don't understand, but they can't understand because some of these terms and these assessments don't translate, in French, or don't translate in, in Spanish, and so on and so forth. So I think for me, being able to be a part of some of these Facebook groups and meeting other parents, with older kids like you all, I'm able to say, okay, I may not get the help. Sorry, I hear an echo. I may not get the help, but what I will do is I'll do the research myself, and I will look to see what schools can I advocate for my child to be at. There's a lot of conversations that we don't have about accessibility, and I feel like the community itself, like when, you know, it's voting season now, you know what I mean?
Right.
As we're kind of coming into these spaces, I feel like for the parents who have the tools, like we need to be in the spaces and saying, hey, these are children that don't get to be seen. And in the medical space, you're throwing these assessments at families that don't understand, you know, how can we connect and help people understand so it's not so foreign, so it doesn't feel like, oh, there's nothing wrong with my child, or I'm coming to terms with it. You know, it's like all of these things are things that you have to learn, you know, in a matter of months or weeks, while you're up against people who have dedicated 8 years of their of their education, and you know, so it's just like, I feel like my child is young, but I don't know. I wish there was more tools for us to understand the importance of these assessments, because the way we translate assessments, especially in my community, it's like, oh, you're trying to say my child is good enough or bad enough, you know? So it's like
the label piece
to,
is real. Yeah, the label piece is real. In terms of a fear that sometimes people have, right? In terms of it. I know, Mindy, we talked a little bit about that. Melanie, I see your hand. And then Jessica, if you don't mind, because you do manage the support group for parents with special needs, if you could speak to anything that Ann has mentioned, that would be great in terms of assessments and tools and things like that. So Mel, go ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback off of Ann. I when it comes to assessments or not wanting to go and get the evaluation for some parents, or I think a lot of times it's not as much pride as it is self-blame. Some parents will look at it and say, I contributed that, or what didn't I do enough of?
Mhm.
So my husband and I both had self-blame in different ways. For me, it was, did I not eat the right vitamins? Did I not do the right things during, you know, my pregnancy? And for him, it's like, did this just come from my genetic makeup? Did I bring this? And when we get stuck there, we stop. But when we focus on, okay, these evaluations are going to help our child move forward. And I will say it is kind of hard sometimes to read everything once it's been evaluated. I'm like, hey, sometimes let's take a break, do something fun, watch something silly, and then come back and read it again, because it can be crushing. Cannot do this, cannot. And I'm like, well, will not, or not right now. That's why I used to say she is currently nonverbal. I just had that hope factor, like, you know, she will be able to communicate in some kind of way because we're helping her.
Yeah.
And you'll understand her language. Because it took a while for my daughter to speak, and she talks forever. That was a little prayer that I said. And yeah, because, you know, like you don't, I was young. I was 20 years old, and I hadn't even, you know, been introduced to anyone with disabilities or anything. But I think, Stephanie, you're the grandma, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank goodness, because my mother was very instrumental in telling me to get the assessments. My mother has background. She in early childhood intervention. She used to be directors of New York City daycare centers. So she directed me. She was like, go get the child evaluated. Like Ann and Pat, they told me in the hospital, yeah, she may not be able to walk, she may not be able to talk, she may do this, she may do that. All this, they said a whole sheet of stuff. Am I right or wrong? Like, and I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't know. So because of my mother, because I came home with my after 9 months, you know, not knowing what to do, because I don't even remember social work. It was so long ago, but I just remember my mother saying, you have to get it tested. And we'll go from there. You have to get it tested. And once we did that, the ball started rolling. And again, you started to see what you can do for your child, because it wasn't much. And my like Kira's 35, it wasn't much, you know, internet stuff out like that to research. And if I didn't have my mother, I'm telling you, I would have been lost. I really would have been lost. So that started the ball rolling. And I actually went to several programs to see which would be best for Kiara. And she actually joined United Cerebral Palsy. And she, you know, she started in their developmental group. And then she end up in their adult program. Once she aged out, we went to look for different programs, and she was so married to this program that she didn't want to go. But it ended. They had a program called Life Options, so we ended up putting her in that, and it was more like school, and it really worked for her. It's very social for her. So um, the assessments are good. Like you have to know
Yeah.
your child, and like I said, you understand your child language. Like Kiera
Yes.
didn't talk for a long time, but I knew what she wanted. I knew when
Yeah.
to don't do something and when she needed something. And then she started talking, and I was like, thank you, God. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
the
listen
commonality
to
that
your
I'm
child too.
hearing, yeah, the commonality that I'm hearing is each of you had the assessments. That's correct? Everybody did an assessment. Pat, you didn't. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
but I work in healthcare, so
Okay.
immediately we were given a caseworker who
Okay.
we were able to get everything through,
Okay. So you had a connection there. Yeah, yeah,
hmm
yeah. But the assessment is critical. And the reason I asked is because, like I said, I've in my circle of family and friends, I know there are people out there who have said, their family members are hesitant about getting the child tested. They don't want them to be labeled, those kind of things. But it's important to get the assessment to make sure that the child can then get the help that he or she needs going forward, right?
they
Right,
need that
right.
IEP to get
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
resources.
yeah. IEP, talk a little bit about that, Pat. And then Jessica, I want you to chime in.
So because the caseworker helped us get everything, so he was immediately because of his prematurity, he automatically qualified for Social Security, um, you know, low birth weight, everything that came with that, and then because he was slower to walk, it took him forever to walk, and he's still not verbal, so he got everything that he needed, and well, he's still getting everything that he needs, and through the IEP, he's guaranteed to get all the services, whether it's speech, PT,
Right,
all
right.
that, If he and his behavior, that's also documented. So he just started high school in September, and I actually held him back in middle school for an extra year because of COVID. I felt like he needed to stay. I wasn't actually ready for him to go to high school. My older sons were like, "Ma, you baby him. He's ready for high school," but I wasn't ready. So I
Hmm.
kept him. I kept him back in middle school. So everything is documented. So now that he's started high school, his behavior it's different, and
Hmm.
it's he now has to get acclimated to a whole nother environment because the teachers in middle school babied him as well. Now
Hmm.
I'm getting calls every day from his high school teacher, like Jonathan had a tantrum today, temper tantrum. He didn't get what he wanted, so he acted out. So I'm dealing with that now, and all I can say is I'll talk to him. And the good thing is it's all documented in his IEP, so it's good. It goes with him. He'll go through the system, like I think Monique said. Um, he'll go through the system. He'll age out at 21 or whatever, but then he's entitled to other services after that.
Yeah. One thing
Yeah.
can I
Let
just say
me,
one thing?
yeah, because then I
Make
want to get to Jessica too. Go ahead,
just
Monique.
because you have the right to they're going to ask you, do you still want a social worker or not? What I found that with Kiera, when a lot of her peers, when they aged out, a lot of them didn't want the social worker. They didn't want to be um, I guess policed, or whatever, but it has been tremendous for Kiera. Like during the pandemic, it's good to have somebody else on your side there. And that's another way that you keep getting things that you need. A lot of people opt out for not, I know one young lady, she's at her grandmother's and she's babysitting the grandkids, and she complains to Kiera all the time. She wants to go back to program, but that was so many years ago, and it's hard to get back in once you don't. So if you can find a program, some kind of outlet where he can still, even if he doesn't go to program, continue with the social work, because you'll still get, some
The services.
the services.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jessica, you've heard again, because you're kind of you're my central person in terms of you manage a support group, right? So I'm sure you're hearing a lot of the different things that people are talking about here. What's your feedback from what you've heard?
Well, I mean, of course, none of any of this is surprising. I see it all the time, and something that I feel like needs to be pointed out is that not all states are created equal.
Yeah.
So, I'm in North Carolina,
Right.
and I help. Well, I'm a volunteer for the Autism Society of North Carolina, and so I admin for the Facebook group there. And it's to the point to where we hear people coming in. We're moving from New York, or we're moving from Virginia. What do you think? We really want to come to North Carolina. I swear to you, I have so many people just come and, I mean, boom, boom, boom. Do not come to North Carolina because the services are not available to our children. We have right now with we have what's called an innovations waiver, and that is basically a disability rights, the things that we can get support from for our children. The waiting list right now is 15 years to get services.
Wow, I'm
15
experiencing
years.
that now in Georgia.
Yeah.
New
And
York is the
so
best.
it really
It
is.
really
And
is. It
when
really is.
yeah,
Yeah.
we do. We tell people don't come.
Yeah.
And it really has just come to that. And those of us who are here, we need to make the best of it, but it's not equitable. It's not
Yeah.
equitable at all. I mean, we have families who cannot afford private services. So many, too many.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can. We're blessed in that way, but I had to quit my career, and so there goes half of our income. And then we can't put our kids through sports and fun things like that because we have therapies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
just we have so many states that do not have any intention
Mhm.
to help families with disabled
It
children.
is so difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Like Pat said, when you're in New York and your child is dying, is it okay if I call you Pat? I'm sorry.
It's
Patricia.
fine. I'm in Maryland, though. I'm from New York, but I'm in Maryland.
Oh, okay. But when you're in New York, once the child is diagnosed, you get a social work, and the ball just goes SSI rolls in, and everything. When you go somewhere else, like now, I'm experiencing this voucher thing that I have to get for Kiara, and we've been here 4 months, and she just got health care. It's tough.
Yeah. Let's
But
talk about
yeah.
the advocacy. I want to switch over to
Mhm.
advocacy because you guys are really getting into that space. And Jen, you brought up a point on Saturday that really hit me in terms of, and I think Mel, you had asked I don't know if you had asked a question about advocacy, but in terms of just fighting for your kids, right? In terms of support and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that because Mindy, I know you also have been in this space as well. But Jen, Mel, and Mindy, if you could talk a little bit about that. Jen, start with you.
So for me, we're all fighters, and but sometimes when you go against the school and you need to get your message across, the term that I really resonate with is advocate. I'm his advocate because they can't
Right.
really say anything about it because I will always be his advocate. The example I gave is at the school, the principal wanted to do something that I was not for because it was not in the best interest of my child. And she said, trust me. And I laughed at her face, like just nervously. And then I composed myself and I said, I don't think you mean ill. I think you're a good person, but I'm his advocate and you are not.
Right.
Because your motivation is the school. You will have a job regardless of he does better or not, or somebody will fill his seat. So,
Right.
dealing with IEPs, dealing with school boards and things like that, it's if you take the emotion out of it, it's a
Mhm.
business thing. They're in the business of teaching children.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
You know, the speech therapists, they have a job regardless if he progresses or not. So
Right.
you are the advocate. You are
Right.
the one. And
Can
the
I-
thing with the schools, I've seen a lot of cases of kids with special needs. They go to a special needs school, or they go to the school and the school has services and they drop them off and they don't do anything at home because they feel like the school have the specialists and they can take care of it. For us, that was not the case. When we spoke to the schools, I would say, you are accountable to me as I am for you.
Right.
And we at home will do speech therapy and social skills. And we're going to work in tandem with you. And we're going to have our meetings every 3 months. And we're going to go down the list. And I'm going to read everything on the IEP. So we're
Good.
all on the same page.
Good.
And it is
Right.
not cheap. The time and effort, it is a second job. It is a
Yeah.
great job because that's how you get gains and, you find the best situation for your child. But it is a lot. And and they can't fault you. You are his advocate and you will always be his advocate. The
Yeah.
school advocates for themselves, more or less.
Right. Can I just ask
Yeah.
a question? Does anyone have guardianship?
I'm in the process. I'm
You're in the
barely
process.
looking.
Right.
Yeah. Hold that thought, Monique. I want to get to
Yeah.
that in a minute.
Can you
Because I know
explain what that is? I don't know
Yeah,
what
you
that
asked that
means.
question. Yeah, I was gonna say, I want her to hold that thought for a minute. Let me get to the advocacy piece and then let's get to the guardianship piece, because the fact that you guys mentioned it might be something that all of you might need to know. Mindy,
And
your
in terms of
advocacy.
sorry.
Yeah. Mindy, go ahead with in terms of advocacy, and then who was next? I think it was Mindy, and then I had somebody else on the advocacy piece.
I think maybe Mel, but
Mel, go ahead.
in regards to advocating for my son, my husband and I are extremely involved in school. So before my son even went to elementary school, we had a meeting set up. Well, we set up a meeting before he even went to school. And we constantly stayed in contact with his teachers. When he gets teachers, I get their email addresses, I get their phone numbers. I mean, they know me, I know them, I talk to them like all the time, to advocate for him. But it's very important, you guys were talking about the evaluation. And I know when it comes to ADHD, a lot of parents are kind of hesitant because they don't want their child to be labeled. That's the big thing, that he'll be labeled. But the unfortunate thing is you don't get the help that the child needs.
Right.
And a lot of times when you have a child that has a differently wired child, what they need. For my son, I mean, and don't be afraid as a parent to ask for exactly what your child needs. If your child can't function in a noisy room and he needs some earplugs or some earphones, you ask them for that. If they have a 4-hour test in North Carolina, end of grade test that children have to take in the 3rd grade, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But you know good and well that your child who has ADHD or ADD cannot sit for 4 hours and take a test. That needs to be broken up. He might need to be sitting somewhere else other than it. You ask for that. Ask for whatever they need. I feel like the evaluation is very, very important. Somebody needs to sit in the classroom and observe. What is he doing? How is he reacting to the teacher? How is the teacher reacting to him? And you need to ask for everything that your child needs. Now, for me, there's a website called Intervention Central. And when you go on that website, you can go and you can get interventions for your children. Like you can go on there and it can give you the verbiage to put in their IEP or their 504 plan. It says, the kind of help that they need, and it can give you ideas. And also what I did too is I listened to a podcast called Tilt Parenting, TILT. And when you're in a group like that with other parents, you get a lot of ideas and things for your kids. It's very important for you to read. It's very important for you to listen to programs so that you can advocate for your child. But I would say to parents, please think about evaluations, and please think about IEPs and 504s, and please be the squeaky wheel. If you have to be arrogant, if you have to be mean. Now I'm very fortunate. My son has been in great schools with people who really cared for him and really helped him. Thank God. But whatever you have to do for your child, do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mal. Thank you, Mindy. Mal, and then Jessica, I see your hand up. And then I don't want to forget the conversation about guardianship. So Mal.
Okay, just the services in North Carolina, yes, they are expensive, and we kept hold of the private ones that we could. And so when they were 30 minutes and cost however many hundreds of dollars for that 30 minutes, they're pressing like, okay, let's make the most of this time. But
Yeah.
then sometimes the services, when they were public, in my first IEP meeting, it was like, well, we do this, and I see your child, and it was a certain service, once a grading period. And I was like, well, how often is a grading period? You know, I was starting to be that squeaky wheel, and they were so used to parents brushing it over, not pausing and asking questions. And it's almost like they prefer the person who's not going to make their day harder. But I'm like, my
Right.
child is here for a reason, and she needs to get her services that are documented. And so I think people who know me to be like, oh, easygoing. But when it comes to my kids,
No.
Yeah.
I am that
Yeah.
squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So commonalities, speak up. Jessica, then Ann, I want you to, I know you had something you wanted to say, and then I'll get to guardianship. Go ahead, Jessica.
Well, it just kind of brings a little bit of everything we've been talking about together, and that, advocating for your child within the school system is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult for the parent who has a child with a diagnosis. So it's even more difficult to advocate for your child without a diagnosis. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be the case. It
Right.
shouldn't be. We should be able to advocate for our children, whether they have a diagnosis or not. It really should be easier, but it's not. And so that diagnosis is a piece that seems to be needed in the school system. What does it give you? It gives you more understanding. A more
Yeah.
understanding will allow for a little bit more ease to come together to decide what the child needs.
Yeah.
If they don't have a diagnosis, unfortunately, it comes to more like, they're just a behavior problem, or they're not being disciplined, or,
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it really does tie it all in. I can't even imagine trying to advocate for my son without a diagnosis in the school system.
Yeah.
I can't even. It's hard enough as it is.
And this is
Yeah.
important. Two things I heard you say. Get the diagnosis. It helps with kind of getting in front of what could be a problem down the line of them labeling your kid as a problem child when they don't fully understand the full scope of what's going on.
Right. Right.
So that testing is so important for later down the line. And then I want to get to the conversation about guardianship. And then the other conversation I want to get to quickly is, how did you prepare your kids? For those of you who have kids in school, how did you prepare them for what they were going to encounter in school? Right? So go ahead, Ann.
So just real quickly about advocacy on my end, a lot of it, I think, in being able to hear parents like you, I guess a lot of our advocacy comes from the hospital. So I think in an example with my son Adonis, there's already an idea of how kids should act. So it's almost like they dismiss trying to feed my child, but when you have, his father and I, we would work so hard on eating. We would work so hard on just different fine motor skills and so forth. Because what I realize is, I think from a physician's perspective, They highlight only medical, but I'm advocating for the developmental aspect as well. And I think when I got into, it was a COVID summer when my son finally came home after a year, and I realized that you're expected to sit on the phone for hours with government agencies, making appointments with therapies. And I realized not everybody has the privilege of private services, but I also realized that my child, because he had a trach, the public service of the school for children with disabilities here, because he had required suction, they were not allowing him in the building.
Right.
We had the funds to send my kid to a Montessori school, and the way he thrived there, people would not understand. So I know my son may be 2, but I wish more parents like you all could come on this end to help more parents like me so that we can see what's ahead, because we think the fight is just here. Or we'll just wait till they're 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But there's just so much that you have to advocate for between hospital, community, and therapy, so that everybody is like, you got to be the chair of every department to make sure that your child can succeed.
Yeah. And
So
it's
it's a little
so
different for
funny.
me, but I'm appreciative of this conversation with you all, honestly.
And you know what? It's so funny because when I thought about this topic, like I said, I mean, Mindy and I have been friends for almost 20 something years. Monique and I go back a long way because of her sister. And matter of fact, I told her I was going through my photo album. I was in her sister's wedding and I remember Kiara in the picture. And I was like, oh my God, that's Kiara. Jen and I are family. Stephanie and I have been to church together. Melanie is I call her my mentee. So a lot of the connections here. And what I realize is this is not a topic that's spoken about a lot. You don't hear it a lot. So I'm blessed to bring this kind of to the forefront in terms of having a vehicle for people to talk about it, because it is something that's not talked about. And quite frankly, there are a lot of people who are, afraid of getting, again, that diagnosis, not wanting to believe, what they think their child may have, not wanting the child to be labeled. There's a lot of things that go into this. But what I'm hearing you guys say, and I hope what people are getting from this is you will help your child if you get them tested. You absolutely need to get them tested so that you can help them. Now, the services might be very different depending on where you live, but one of the main things is to get the support that you need, having them tested is a key component of that. I do want to talk about the guardianship piece because you asked a question. Someone said something about, yes, I'm in the process of doing it, and Patricia didn't know anything about it. So here's an educational place for us to go into. So talk a little bit about the guardianship.
So the guardianship, I want to say it is more for the parent whose child is verbal. Okay, if your child can't communicate now, I didn't get the guardianship until recently. Now, how that works is that if your child is verbal and they want, once they age out and they're verbal and he needs something and he or she needs something and they don't want it, you can't say anything about it. That's as far as if they don't want to do speech, if they don't want to go to, if they need some type of procedure, and if they say they don't want it, although you have been the advocate and you're their mother, you're their parent. Once they age out, you're not going to be able to say anything if they say no, even though they don't. Now, I had to get a guardianship because Kira is very verbal, but Kira can't read and she can't write. She can sign a name, but she don't know what she's signing. That's what we're going through now in Georgia. So, but if your child is, older, you should try to look into that, because once they say they don't want to do it, that's just because they don't want to be bothered or whatever. There's not much you can do about it. And Kara will tell you in a minute, no, I don't want that. And she may need it, and I try to talk to her and try to understand it. But if she don't feel like going through it, don't want to be poked or propped, like she has to go to GYN and things like that. If she say no, and she go to the doctor and she say, no, I don't want it, but you need it. I try to let her understand that every woman does it. Grandma does it because that's her best friend. You know,
Mhm.
I just have to, try to tell her. But if I didn't have the guardianship, she wouldn't be able to, she would be like, no, I don't want it. And that may happen to, you know, once your kids get older. And I didn't need it when we was young. Everyone knew I was Kira's mother, her
Yeah.
doctors or her, so you don't have any problem. But now I moved to another state,
Yeah.
and your situations may change. And if your
Yeah.
situation changed, then and your child says no, there's nothing you can do about it. But just read about it and think about it. That's
Yeah. Jen, you're
yeah.
going to say something, Jen? Go ahead, Jen.
Yes. So that's guardianship is for verbal kids that, if they don't want to do anything, if they can't handle their money, and,
Right.
So you basically take over legal, because if they go to jail or get arrested, if you're not their guardian, they go
Right.
in the system and
Right.
you cannot have access to them, which is very
Right.
scary. So it's legal, it's finances. If they want to spend all their money, you step in
Absolutely.
to handle the bank accounts. Or if they, some of them are dating and the girlfriend is taking advantage, you're the guardian, you could have hold financially,
Right.
legally, all those things. For kids that are nonverbal, I want to say you still can do it, because if
You can still do it. Yeah.
there's certain circumstances that you need to make sure it's one person or the parent, the two parents are the guardians, or grandma or whoever. Somebody has to be designated as a guardian. But I believe it's the same contract, and you have to go through lawyers. But there is a checklist when you turn 18 for special needs that says, this is what you need as a parent. And some of it will apply and some of it won't. There's a healthcare proxy. You don't need to be a guardian to be the healthcare proxy.
Right.
Healthcare proxy is that if they go into the hospital, even if they say, I don't want mom there, you're the proxy, you can make decisions, you can be there. And doctors will defer to you.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a special needs trust. So if the child, after you pass, where does the money go? How do you want it allocated? Who wants to, who do you want them to manage the money if they can't? It's called a special needs trust, and you need a lawyer. There's a cost to that, but you need to do it because
for the guardianship as well. Yeah.
Yes, for the guardianship.
Yeah. Mhm.
In Florida, they have a thing called an ABLE account. So when you get SSI for your child, all right, you only are supposed to have about $2,000 in the account of their bank account, or their SSI gets deducted or withheld or whatever. In Florida, and I want to say it's going statewide. I'm not sure though. I know there was one in New York. You can set up this fund. It's a bank account for them. They can use it for expenses, but it does not go against the SSI amount. And you can have, I think, up to $110,000 or $150,000 in there that they can use for expenses, and it does not go against the SSI, which we just started. We just opened it up with $50 because we just wanted to make sure he has an account, because there was a cutoff for the age. I think 26.
So what I'm hearing here is, beyond just the age group that these kids are, you got to think about adulthood and where they are, from a ability standpoint. And what I'm hearing is, depending on what their level of ability, that guardianship will become important piece to look into. And then there's other stuff that you might want to look into as well, trusts and things like that. So my last question for you guys, how did you two questions. One, how did you prepare your child, for those who have child age kids, how did you prepare them for school and what they were going to encounter? Because I have to imagine that the thought of them entering school had to be a little bit unnerving for you guys. So who wants to tackle that?
Can I just jump in, even though my son is 2?
Yes, go ahead, Ann.
When they denied him for the school for disabilities, I was afraid, but I realized, like, in my situation, luckily I worked at home, and I was able to pay for him to go to another school. And I realized that I was nervous because I didn't want kids to treat him, Montessori style. They have different age of kids, like it ranges. So there was 4 different sections, and I was really scared. But if anything, the best way I prepared was listening to some of the parents, because in the hospital, they tell me my kid should be doing one thing, but then I have parents who are saying, well, In actuality, my kid is doing a lot of what your child is doing. So, just kind of taking it day by day. Adonis wasn't steady on his feet at first, but just being able to go into a playground and a space where you could just wonder. I was fortunate for that because it's not school per se, but it's school, and they taught him a lot of things that I'm sorry, I cannot
Yeah.
teach him. So yeah, that was just
Thank
a
you,
bit for my
Ann.
2-year-old.
Right.
No, but they're aware. They want to play like any other kid, right? So you got to think about that. So for you, those of you school age, how did you prepare your kids, Jessica? Go ahead.
Well, for me personally, what I did was I just raised the kids to embrace their uniqueness. Really, there's this quote. I love this quote. It's kind of become a family motto, but it's "Why fit in where you were born to stand out?" And
Mm,
we really embrace that here. And I mean, for instance, my daughter comes back. She's called weird at school, and she says thank you. You
mm-hmm.
know, we think we think normal here in this family. We think normal is boring and unique is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Thank
that's
you. Thank you for
that's what
that.
we've embraced here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mel. I see you, and Stephanie. I see you smiling as well. Go ahead, Mel.
Yes, we
Oh,
embrace
Jessica, I
weird.
missed the quote.
Yeah. Say the quote again, Jessica.
Let's make sure I get it right. So, why fit in when you were born to stand out?
Okay.
Why fit in when you're born to stand out? Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Okay.
Go ahead, Mel, and then Stephanie.
Yes, I was saying we embrace weird in our household as well. I just tell my kids we're all made different. No two people are exactly alike. So, but how do I prepare my kids for school? We found out through some behaviors where transitions were really, really hard. So, I would drive up to the school every day 2 weeks before school started just to get her used to the routine of we're going to go to the school. Now we're going to get out the car and just stand here. And we just practice that. Then essential oils,
Nice.
expensive vitamins, bath time when it didn't. Okay. So a bath at night woke her up. So I would give her a bath every morning. Then I made sure her clothes had the right puppy because she loves dog. I mean, prepare, and research,
Yes.
research.
Yes.
And people
Yeah.
like Jessica, I don't know Jessica personally, but I follow her on the web page,
Yeah.
and she's
Melanie
been so
referred
helpful.
Jessica. Yeah. Mel referred Jessica to me. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, and
Steph-
Mindy too. Mindy, just calling Mindy and her sharing her experiences and helping me navigate the school system and
yeah.
what to expect. So reaching out, and I just want to say real quick, I'm thankful for other people who shared because it helped me to share and helped me to see I'm not alone. So that made it
Yes.
just so helpful.
And
But
this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this again, because of the stories I'm hearing in my inner circles who people are new to this journey, and it can be scary. I get it. It can be scary. Steph.
And yeah, for Tejan, I believe when he first went to school, it was scary because he was nonverbal at that time, but could definitely get his point across if need be. We did have a few safety scares when he was in elementary school, where he came home with his eye cut from
Mm,
running. He got away because he was fast when he was younger, like he could get
Mhm.
away. And we understood it the first time, but the second time it was like, wait a minute,
mm-hmm.
you guys, something's not right, because Tejan he was very, he would mimic everything you do. So what he saw, he did.
Mhm.
And I think that's most of children with disabilities, because again, they're trying to find their place, because they know that they don't look the same, they don't process the same. But we were very fortunate when Tejan went to school. So it's like I tell Tejan all the time, I can be out in the store and there's 50 people in the store that knows Tejan. And he's like, hey, hi. And I'm like, where do you know these people from? I mean, it's like,
That's
and then
Kiara
going into
also.
high
Yeah.
school, grown people like, hey, I
Yeah.
know you. And he's like, hey. And I'm like, whoa. But,
Yeah.
again, school is that outlet for them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
say for those of you
Absolutely.
that have younger children, advocacy is going to be the key, and
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
sure that you speak for your kid and you make sure that you get them what they need while they're young, So when they do become older, you don't have to worry about that because Tajon definitely has a village just based on him being
Right. And that's
Tajon.
important. Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
I just want to add.
Mindy, go ahead, Pat, and then Mindy. Go ahead, Pat.
I was just gonna add on the daycare issue that Ann was mentioning. Don't ever give up because when Jonathan was younger, daycare, finding the right daycare for him was one of the hardest things.
Mm.
And then at one point they wanted to charge more because he had a disability because they said he needed more resources. So I had to file a suit against them, but you can't
Yeah, you
charge
can't do that.
more for
Good
a
for you.
disabled child. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to say if one daycare doesn't work out, there's always another one and another one and another one.
Yes. Yes. Mindy,
Good.
go
Good.
ahead.
Um, for for parents with children who have ADD or ADHD, there's a workbook that I bought when my son was in elementary school, and it was called Thriving with ADHD. And it just gave him a lot of coping mechanisms, and it explained what ADHD was. And I think that's another important point for parents, that they need to understand what's going on with them. And the way that I explain it to my son is pretty much, I don't know why they call it attention deficit. They don't have a deficit of attention. That's the total opposite.
Right.
So for me, I was kind of explaining it to him as, telling him that he was kind of like a superhero. He really had a lot of information in his head, and it was hard for it to sort out. That's just how intelligent he was.
Right.
So
Oh,
the ADHD workbook helped him to get some coping mechanisms and just explain to them what's going on so that they're not in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jen and Pat, anything you want to add in terms of what you guys done? I know Jen Miles is involved in, he's in a band now, right?
Well, no, he does theater.
Theater.
So
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
for us, we took him out of private school, public school, and we put him in a private school for kids on the spectrum that have it's autism with other issues also, and that did help a lot because he was with his peers. They knew it was small class size. At that, in the house, everybody's quirky, so we're all
Yeah.
quirky birds.
Yeah.
And there's
Look, you
quirky's
sure
good.
are. You sure
Yeah,
are.
yeah. So it was
Yeah.
to set him up for success. But what I did when he was younger, there was a video of this father that had a prayer that he would recite to his son driving to school. And it started out with, I thank God for waking me up today. And it was a whole paragraph of things. And one of the lines was that whenever I'm confronted with a problem or conflict, I think before I react. And, we would say, after a while, he was just like, okay. But I would always, on the way, the last 5 minutes, let's recite the prayer, because I wanted that in his thought to maybe, if he's going through something, to think, I study hard. I raise my hand when confronted with if I do not understand, I raise my hand and ask for help.
Right.
And, little things like that.
Yeah.
Physical activity, for kids with ADHD, run them all day. They have energy to burn. Put them in theater, in sports.
Yeah.
The school had them running in the morning and afternoon, and that centered them also. It's a team approach. It is a village, and you have to have your support system, and it's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, but it's a really nice puzzle.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for that. Yeah. Patricia.
I just wanted to add what Jen said about it does take a village. I'm grateful when you were saying earlier the question about what were some of the issues that you encountered having children with special needs or difficulties, and I'm just grateful that you do have a village. My two oldest children are great with Jonathan. They're both boys, so they take him with them to play basketball or to give me a minute. And the oldest actually works in a special needs school as a behavioral interventionist. Jonathan's first school when he was a baby.
God bless him. Yeah.
You know, when he took him one time to parent back to work, what is it? Take your child to work day. And everyone emailed me. I still keep in touch with some of the teachers, and they were like, Jalan brought Jonathan to back to, and I'm like, Jonathan hasn't been there for like over 10 years, but they remember him, and it's just so wonderful that the teachers all, you know, remember him from when he was a baby. And Facebook and social media is great because teachers that Jonathan knew when he was, you know, little, they see him now on Facebook and they're like, oh my God, I remember when he couldn't walk.
Yeah.
He would creep through
And look
the
at him
hallways,
now.
and look at him now. He's playing basketball and
Right.
running and jumping. But, you know, I think someone was saying, your children will talk. Jonathan's nonverbal, and I claim that he will speak one day.
That's right.
I believe that he will.
Oh,
That's right.
yes, yes, yes. Last question, y'all. What are you doing to take care of yourselves? Because it's a lot. It's a lot. And I know
It
there
is
could
a
be
lot.
parents out there who are tired. Last words. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
We travel all the time, travel everywhere. We take
Yeah.
Adonis with us, but we travel, and it's our gift to each other. So yeah, that's what we do.
Thank you, Ann.
We travel too, but we just go to family. We go back and forth to New York at least 3 or 4 times a month, because I feel my family really is the only ones that understand us.
Yeah.
You know, Jonathan doesn't go anywhere else besides family, and they know him, and they understand him, and he basically gets spoiled to, you know, I just, and I feel comfortable with my family, so that's where he goes.
So you're doing
He
to
doesn't
take
go
care of
anywhere
yourself?
else. Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? What you doing to take care of yourself? Mel, go ahead.
I hike or work out either Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I homeschool her, so it's the one of the days that my husband and everyone is home and I get missing. And sometimes my mom will be like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I tell no one. I take no one. I go alone.
That's
And
the purpose.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah.
That helps me.
Thank you, Mel. Anyone else? Just what are you doing to take care of yourself? What do you do to take care of yourself?
Well, I used to travel. I used
Mhm.
to I just got married 2 years ago, and yeah, almost 3 years now. Thank you. And we bought a house. We moved to Georgia. So I am the aide right now. For the past 4 months, I've been the aide. I'm not really doing anything. I go get my nails done, but
Okay.
right
Hey,
now I'm just waiting to
self
get.
care.
I have a brother here who helps, and they come over. My brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, they come over every Friday because Kiara has to have her turn up Friday. we
Good.
She comes over, she has a fake martini, and you know, every
Well,
Friday she looks forward to that.
she is an adult now.
Yes, she is. She
Yes,
is.
she's
Right.
35. She is an adult.
Yes, she sometimes she
Yes.
gets a little bit, but she's
Yeah.
just happy that she thinks she get a martini every Friday. So that's a family thing we did, and I'm in the process of trying to get some homemade or something to help me. So
Good.
my girlfriend who lives there, who actually used to be my daughter's aide in New York, she's like, whenever you want, I'll give you a date night. I'm just not ready for it right now, but yeah, it's
Okay.
okay.
Okay. But it's important to make sure you guys are
Yeah.
taking care of yourselves. So, anyone else? What
So
you doing?
Michelle, what I do is I take a few days off of work every month.
Mm-hmm.
I take at least one or two. This next month it'll be 3.
Right.
But you know, I go get a massage.
Yes, we do. We go get a massage.
Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
we have. Me and Michelle enjoyed one of those days. We ate, we got our nails done, and we went to get a massage. So,
Yeah. Good.
and because you don't have the time or whatever, if you could just take a vacation day, that's what I do. I just take a
Yeah.
vacation day.
Good.
because he's in school, my husband's at work, and I can enjoy myself.
Yes, yes. Well, I want to thank you all. I know this has probably been longer than any one that I've done, but it's such an important topic, and I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing your stories. I know people will be blessed by it, and yeah, so I'm gonna put you in the studio so I can close myself out. Um,
Thank
so
you, Michelle. This
thank
was
you so
Thank you.
wonderful.
It's
much.
been
Thank
Thank
you.
awesome.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Very
you.
nice.
Thank you.
It
Thank
was
you.
nice
Thank you.
meeting you all. I
Nice
hope we
meeting
do
you
this
Yes.
guys too.
again.
Nice to
Stay in
talk to
touch.
some people.
Yes.
Look, I'm bringing y'all back on as y'all talking about. It's nice to talk to some people. Yes. Stay in touch. I will make sure you guys have each other's email addresses
Oh,
and
thank
everything.
you. Thank
Okay.
you,
I will make
Michelle.
sure you do that. All right, y'all. So thank you everyone
All
for
right.
hanging
Good
in there
night.
with us. Thank you. And again, an important topic, one that has not been I've not seen really in this kind of format where people are talking about it openly, and I did want to bring it to light. Me as a life coach, I love helping people. That's what I do, and this is an important topic. Like I said, I have a lot of people who were on this live stream who are in my circle. So I would hear their stories, and I'm like, oh my God. And like I said, just really recently spoke to someone, and they have relatives who are in this space, new in this journey. I know the one big takeaway: get an assessment. That is a start of so many things, right? You can decide what you do after you have the assessment, but if you want services, if you want support, if you want your child to thrive, getting an assessment is one of the first things that you need to do. So, on that note, I'm going to leave you all. I'm going to be posting some information on my page about other things I have going on for Real Conversations. Next month, I'm going to have a lighter topic called He Said, She Said, Dating and Relationships, which should be fun. A fun topic, serious topic. But we get into the holidays. We know when we get to the holidays, people start thinking about who they bring in to the family dinners and all that other stuff. So, we'll hear from each other around that. Okay. Have a great rest of your week, and hope to see you next month. Bye.